Good morning, everyone. Nick Harding here, CEO and founder of 51 Degrees, which is an AI and data science consultancy. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about generative engine optimization, or ANSA, which is essentially creating a web estate that ranks well in search capabilities within ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the other large language models. What you can see on the screen here in front of you is a platform called Trakkr. Trakkr is the tool that I use to monitor my own generative engine optimization performance. But what I want to talk to you about today is using Trakkr along with Claude to create content to plug gaps where I have them in terms of generative engine optimization. So here you can see the dashboard. 51 Degrees is a relatively young business, and so therefore competing with some of these huge firms is difficult. But nonetheless, we're making some good traction. And you can see a few of the stats here on the dashboard. But what I really want to show you is first of all, the prompts that we are trying to rank for and via these platforms, which you can see in this list. So, for example, things like best AI consulting for mid-market financial services firms, or what is the best way to hire a fractional AI officer, or indeed the best independent consultancy for AI agent implementation in the UK. So these are some of the prompts that we are now ranking for because of our efforts. But what that gets really interesting is in Trakkr, you can then see ways to improve the growth of your brand, such as, for example, creating content. And what the content page here does is enable you to create content that plugs the gaps in these prompts that you saw a second ago. So by creating this piece of content, it will plug a gap that I have in those questions that people are searching for in Gemini or in Claude or in ChatGPT. So this is all in the Trakkr tool. If I use this tool to create the content, it's great, but it has limitations because it ultimately has a set of rails that it runs down. And I want to be able to add to the content. I want to give my own perspective. I want to use my own tone of voice. I want to use some facts and figures and things, which this platform doesn't enable me to do. So instead, what I've done is I've connected Claude to Trakkr using an MCP server. And I've then created some skills around that. And you can see here in this 51D blog brief skill, in this skill, very quickly you can see the first thing is pull the Trakkr data. So what Claude then does is connect with Trakkr via an MCP server. An MCP server is similar to an API, but is more flexible in its approach with an AI controlling it. It then connects to the MCP server at Trakkr. It gets the content ideas, it gets the opportunities, it gets the scores, it gets a load of other data. It then essentially goes through and articulates which pieces are going to be most useful in order to plug the gaps that we have in generative engine optimization. It gets all of that information and it comes to me and says, we think this is the best piece, and here's a list of 10 of them. Which one of these do you want to choose from? I choose one. It then goes ahead and in a GEO friendly way, then basically writes the piece that is promoting that I should put on my website. And this next skill, which is the 51D blog writer skill, goes through and does so. And then finally, I have another skill, which is publishing, which basically takes the piece whenever it's complete and turns it into a piece of HTML I can copy and paste directly into the blog functionality on my website, which is a WordPress website. This basically means that the production of the content is very quick. The example of this in production here, so this is the first prompt. I've said, please suggest some content ideas. It said, number one piece is, should I hire an in-house AI person or use an AI consultancy? I've then gone through and completed that process, with its recommendations. I've then given my point of view. I've given it some internal data, client scenarios like case studies, etc., etc., etc. You can see here all of my answers. It's then given me a brief, which I can then feed back on. And once I get happy with that brief, start to turn it into a piece of content. Anyway, zooming to the end, you can see on our website here is indeed that final piece, and you can see basically it then brings in, this is a piece that's ultimately made by Claude using the data from Trakkr via the MCP server to plug gaps that we need to fill. So what are the sorts of things that people are searching for that I need to try and rank for? So things like why hiring ahead of AI first usually fails, or why traditional consultancies create dependencies, or how to decide internal hire versus traditional consultancy, and then, facts around how much these things cost, how long things take, and then lots of other questions here, such as what happens to our AI capability when the engagement ends, or indeed, can AI really help me measure a business with under 100 employees? How long does it take to see an ROI from an AI consultancy engagement, etc., etc., etc. So this is then plugging the gaps in the generative engine optimization in my own tone of voice with relevant references, etc., etc. I think this is pretty cool. Please check it out.